Hello guys and welcome to Supreme Ruler 2030. Back in Supreme Ruler Ultimate, it was requested that I make a guide about all the different settings in your way of getting started with this game. So I'm going to go through the same thing here in 2030, going through all these options and showing you what it's like to set up a game and what all the different options mean to help you pick what game mode is best for you. First, really simply, we have the tutorial here. There's 4 different tutorials. You play them in order from left down to here, left, right, left, right. I guess you could take them out of order, that's really your choice, but it's pretty simple. Unlike Supreme Ruler Ultimate, this is an actual unique thing. It's not just starting up some random game and you get some pop-ups you'd get anywhere else. This is an actual unique mode now. There's not really a whole lot to customize here. You just select one, you hit start, and it'll load you right into the tutorial, just like that. There we are. I highly suggest doing this first if you don't already know how to play the game. Next, we have the campaign option. Once again, kind of different from Supreme Ruler Ultimate here. You have, oh nice, it resets the audio every time I pick one. That's new. Anyway, you have 4 options, 4 campaigns: Germany, Russia, spoilers, America, and China. And with each of these campaigns, you have a kind of different start and you have much different goals. Different from Supreme Ruler Ultimate, where the campaigns were kind of just sandboxes with little side objectives. These are actual unique campaigns filled with unique events, and they don't let you customize very much. This is just like Supreme Ruler Ultimate. You can pick the difficulty, and this will change a plethora of different settings. It's up to you what you pick. I don't feel like normal should be too difficult. And then this right here, this political leaning here, just determines the general leaning of your cabinet members, which can have an effect on how they behave if you have them automate tasks. Then into the real meat of it, we have the sandbox, and this is where it gets real complicated. Now, right now, as of recording, we have 4 different main sandboxes: 2023 World, 2030 World, which are the same, it's just different years, but a lot of information's carried over. The way I'd separate this is, if you want NATO, go 2023. If you want like no preset alliances whatsoever, go 2030. Global Crisis 2030 is just the world is on the verge of war and some things are changed to make it more warlike. And 2030 Shattered World, which is just you take all the nations, you start splitting them up into smaller pieces. I believe they're splitting them into even smaller pieces over time. It's most reflected in America, which gets turned into 50 fucking regions, as opposed to other nations don't get turned into as much. Here we have that difficulty and leaning, again, that you could pick through. It applies to everything. Personally, if you want a recommendation, I would just leave this on normal all the time, because if you look at the wiki, what this changes is primarily modifiers, and if you go easy, the player just gets buffs and the AI gets debuffs. If you go up, it's the same thing, more modifiers. According to the developers, this can also change the tactics the AI uses, but unfortunately, you cannot enable better AI tactics and performance without also giving yourself a bunch of debuffs, such as just money you spend, Diplo you do, just will not be worth the same as it would be for an AI. So for the most balanced gameplay experience, I'd say put it on normal. You have your victory condition. This is under every single sandbox option. You basically choose how do you want to win. There are insanely less options than Supreme Ruler Ultimate had, but basically complete is the game will end and you'll be victorious when you take over the entire world. Capital requires you to take over capitals. This has always been a very buggy thing in Supreme Ruler, where it's like the first capital you take over will just win you the game, strangely. And capture, I'm pretty sure that's the capture specific location, but don't 100% quote me on that. World volatility, this determines how likely the AI is to make alliances, go to war, and both of those chances go up the higher you go up. Low is effectively medium from when Supreme Ruler Ultimate released, but it performs a little bit different in this game. Also, the higher up you go with world volatility, there will be this constant creeping provocation where nations will be inspired to go to war with each other, but it heavily emphasizes the player. So the higher you go up, the more likely every AI will be to declare war, but primarily on the player. It is unfortunately unbalanced like that, but it is because The AI are designed to be paranoid of the player. The game, unfortunately, as the time of recording this, has a problem where all the AI tend to become friends anyway. So whereas I would usually recommend leaving this on low, no matter what you have it at, alliances, especially through mutual defense, are going to be quite common. So I would almost encourage you at this point to put it higher. So at least they're most likely to go to war and break their endless chains of mutual defense. There are also scenarios that are a little bit different. Battle of Italy 2030. This is just kind of a design they made for a workshop scenario because they needed to post one. Battle of Russia. I believe this was the demo. They had a demo and now it's a scenario. A simple arena that does not resemble the real world. Africa. Just with the goal of, it looks like entirely different government types going up against each other. Pretty simple, pretty arcadey. This game really plays like an RTS in military, so that makes sense. And then 2030 World, again, but I don't actually know what the difference of this is. All right, now we're ready for the really complicated stuff, the game options. And this is the primary reason why this guide was needed in Supreme Ruler Ultimate. So we're gonna go from top to bottom. They've changed things a lot here in some instances compared to Supreme Ruler Ultimate. So military, economic, and diplomatic difficulty. This is kind of just like this overall difficulty. If I raise this to hard, you'll see them change. This is all this modifies, is it just changes these difficulty settings primarily. Unfortunately, I don't think, yeah, no, you can't. I was say, I don't think you can raise this and get the better AI tactics because that comes with like military difficulty. Again, I recommend normal, but I've already explained how these work. Let's move on to resources. This is pretty simple. This is just how many resources there are in the world. Standard is the way they intend you to play the game. Abundant is if you feel like you think there should be more resources. And lower than that, if you want to make resources rarer, thus harming the global economy and making potentially wars over resources more necessary. We have initial funds, which is pretty simple. Default is what they want you to have. Low is if you want everyone to be a little bit poorer at the beginning of the game. High is if you want everyone, by the way, everyone, not just you, to have more money at the start of the game. No new bonds is basically default, but it makes it so no debt can be taken out ever for funding anything during this game. So if the debt system is a little too geopoliticsy for you, and what you actually want is something closer to an RTS, then no new bonds is perfect for you. Random events, we're just talking about like, oh, wood came in today and there was more than we expected. Good. And then tomorrow it's like, oh, a truck of wood fell into the ocean and blew up, so we lost all the wood. That's what these are. You're just gambling RNG chances on getting more or less. It's up to you if you want that. They're not special, they're not unique, and they will not actually really affect your gameplay. They're just more alerts that are there, and will, for me, they're pretty annoying. I recommend having that to none, because again, it won't change anything. Global AI stance. This is the behavior of the AI. On default, basically, different nations are just going to have different stances, and it's going to be assigned to them. But you can set it so that the AI in the world kind of take one stance. So if you want them to be rather passive, you could set that. If you want them to be aggressive and warmongery without raising world volatility, this is a good way to do that. Defensive, they'll prepare a lot of defenses and defensive units, but not actually really be very aggressive themselves. And then unpredictable, this will just fucking randomize what their behavior is for every single nation in the game. AI faction cost / speed advantage. This is new. This is from Galactic Ruler. This is AI cheats. Do you want the AI to pay less for things and make things faster? Here's your option to do that. It's just a good thing if you feel the game's too easy, I suppose. I think that's why that's there. Scheduled game end is if you want to actually have an ending for you to achieve whatever goals you have set by, but the default is none, so you could just play forever until you're happy with ending. Allied victories, this is so that, for example, with complete, you need to take over the world. If allied victories are on, then you only need to take over those that you do not have a formal alliance with. So that's what this is for. Start game without national debt. This is not the same as no new bonds. This will just make it so all the debt that's in the world by default, which they try to mimic the real world's debt. This will just delete all of that. So you can have not set no new bonds, so you can still take out debt, but you can start with a fresh slate, not having to deal with the debt that would already be in the world. This is almost a nice thing, because the way they handle the debt makes it really hard to pay off old debt versus new debt, because they bunch it all together in one big bond. But you could also leave no new bonds, so you can't take out any, but you would still start, if you don't enable this, with the debt you already have. So paying off that debt is kind of an early challenge. Up to you. It's good customization. Critical international opinion is one of my least favorite options in this entire game. This just takes every diplomatic malice you could possibly have in the game, and it just racks it up to like 17. It's insane. So if you have a mutual defense partner, for example, and you don't help them, unlike by default, if this is off, this could absolutely ruin what the world thinks of you. And it will commonly ruin what AI think of each other, because AI are not good at sticking to their commitments in this game. If you go to war with someone, this will make the world hate you way more than they would by default, etc., etc. Personally, this is a very extreme setting. If you ask me, we, in my community, usually always leave this off. It seems very unbalanced. But if you want more consequences to war, if you think wars should be more averted, and you just want to penalize the AI quite a lot because they don't know how to interact with this at all, this is a good option for this, but it will apply to the player as well. Moving over into your gameplay options, we have at the top approval effects. This is just when you do anything, like go to war or make something that someone likes or dislikes, how will your population in the world, what will they think about it? High, it's very weird that it defaults to high. Medium, take medium as normal. This is the 100% number one 1.0 value. That's what this is. High is a modification of that goes above that. Low is a modification that goes below that. So medium is your default balanced approval rate. High is if you want your actions to affect the population and what everyone thinks of you more. And low is if you want less of it. And then there's just none, where even if you go to war, no one in your country will care. Even if you make a bunch of nuclear tests, nobody will care. And then it kind of goes the same way with nuclear weapon penalties. There's no none here, but the default is actually medium. This was the 1.0 100% value. High means enhanced penalties for using nuclear weapons. Penalties meaning like I nuke someone and now everyone's going to get upsetty, including my own population. You can lower this. It's very good if you're playing like a World War II situation. Low, nobody would really care then. Medium, this is default balance, but in the real world, in this case, high might be more realistic for the world we live in today. As someone that's shot hundreds of nukes, I could tell you high isn't even really enough to get to that point. This is really up to you. Personally, I love leaving things on medium because I like normal. I like the intended way of playing. You can just disallow nuclear weapons altogether if you don't want to manage them, if you think they're a headache, or if you want to make things actually a little more fair because the AI does not know how to use nukes. Units eliminated when a region falls. Basically, if I am fighting Russia and I take Moscow and they surrender from that, but they still have 1,000 units left fighting somewhere else, like in Ukraine, this will actually delete all of those units. That is with this enabled. If you have it disabled, which is the default, what will happen instead is that units, just like land, will be split between those that are at war, take them over. So if I'm the only one at war with Russia and I take Moscow, they have more units left in Siberia, nobody else is at war with them, then I will get all of their remaining units. So that's the default. Change this as you please. You can also start the game without any units. You really want to play this like an RTS and not like the geopolitical grand strategy that it's generally trying to be? Here's your option. Start game without units, build things yourself. And so that's what this does. It's up to you to use that. I don't personally recommend it because I don't play this game like an RTS, but it's good if you want to play it like an RTS. Unit trades arrive instantly. This is the Merchant Marine setting from Supreme Ruler Ultimate Inverse. And so what that means is if I trade via diplomacy some units to another country and this is enabled, then that unit will teleport there with like half damage along with some military goods for them to repair it and get it up to snuff. If this is off, then if I trade that unit, it will pop out of my barracks belonging to them, and they will have to arrange for actually logistically transporting that unit. Sounds cool to leave it off. However, the AI really doesn't know how to do this. For example, if you trade planes to another AI that is not right next to you, you can guarantee most of those planes are going to blow up. Great if you're just trying to sell planes, I guess. But if you want the AI to be believable, a challenge, or not waste their money, you want this on. If you watch any of my videos saying how this means the opposite of what it did before, a couple weeks ago, it did. It used to be that if you had this on, it would do the opposite of what it said, because it was still the Merchant Marine setting. They changed the wording, but not the function. But that has been fixed. This does do exactly what it says now. Next, we have limit domestic and military approval effects. It's like this right up here. So if you don't like the approval effects because you tend to do some crazy stuff, and you're thinking, but I don't want to turn it off, you can still limit from initial action. So if you go on like a nuking spree and you want there to be consequences, but you don't want it to like destroy your nation if it is destroying your nation somehow, you can limit it. So the effects will still be there in the amount that you have set, but there will be a hard cap on how much it can change at any one time, really. The default is off. This is more of a crutch. Do with it as you will. Allow government change checked on. This does not let you change your government. This is a very misleading sentence. What this actually means is that if you are a democracy and you fail your election, then you can continue playing the game by doing a coup d'etat and taking over as a dictatorship, which is the worst government form that has the worst buffs and the worst for the player debuffs. This is a like second chance option if you are like a democracy or someone that has elections. If you're already a dictatorship, this doesn't fucking matter. Fog of War. It's Fog of War. Oh, and I would recommend having this on because why not? But it's really up to you. But Fog of War is just that. It's Fog of War. Do you want Fog of War on? Yes or no? This applies to AI as well. The AI does not cheat to see through it. So it's really just up to the flavor of what you want. There's a lot of recon mechanics in this game. So it's designed to have Fog of War on. Speaking of recon, we have enhanced spotting and enhanced ranges. This takes the values for spotting enemies and even shooting them and jacks them up by like 4 times. That may sound excessive. However, the ranges in this game are weird. Every hex is like a 14-mile area or some shit like that. And so some cases, multiple hexes aren't even what you're looking at by default when you're looking at recon or shooting ranges. Therefore, rather than just increasing efficiency in a single hex, this allows you to actually hit multiple hexes. Honestly, I thought this was more helpful if you're playing in like World War I, World War II where the ranges are low. But in this, you're going to be turning like missile platforms from being able to shoot across a tiny bit of Spain to being able to shoot across all of Europe. So personally, I feel like this, at least the ranges, maybe not spotting, that's still up to you, is not really very good in 2030, but test it out. See which one you prefer. Do you prefer the normal things it says when you look at the spec sheet of every unit, or do you prefer it to be 4 times that? Then you have what is probably the worst setting in this game, disable unit banking. If you've seen my early videos covering this game in beta, I loved how they added the animations of the ships just like banking to the side when they turn. It's beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Unfortunately, they've decided to give you an option to turn this off. I don't know why they do that, but if you wanted to not see this beautiful animation of the units turning across the hexes, then you can get rid of that. Going into systems now, colonies keep military complexes. If this is off, then whenever you set up a colony, whenever you take over a colony or something like that, or start a game and have a colony, then all the military complexes will go to you. You could give them back, that's still an option, but they'll default to you. This is best if you want maximum control. But AI, for example, with colonies, they will just always keep it. They will never give it to their colonies ever. And so that can really affect gameplay. Turn it on, and the default will be for colonies to keep their military complexes. In Supreme Ruler Ultimate, this is really iffy on what you picked, but I feel like keeping this on all the time really just makes a lot of sense in this game, because you now have direct control over everything that your colonies do. So I feel like it works a lot better, but you can still turn it off if that's what you prefer. Next, we have loyalty penalties to supply and line of sight. Basically, if you have less loyalty than 100% or whatever, your supply and line of sight would take some sort of a hit in that area. It's on by default, but just like SRU, I recommend turning this off 100% of the time. And SRU is because anything that you did not have pure loyalty for, like you didn't start like that at the beginning of the game, you would always have some sort of a debuff, and I found it to be a little dramatic and a little extreme. It was one of those extreme options. Well, it's worse here. It's way worse. Because now you have the new loyalty system, where there's a loyalty within a loyalty, and there's tons of ways to reduce that loyalty. I have never found a consistent way in the UI to raise the loyalty. So most loyalties end up going to 0 eventually. You don't have a lot of control there. So punishing yourself for something you don't have control over just seems like a bad idea. I'd recommend turning this off, because supply, even with this off, by the way, supply and line of sight will already be problematic, especially supply for you in this game. Electricity sales, very simple. I make excess electricity. By default, it will vanish into thin air the next turn because there are no batteries where I can put it. However, with this on, I could take some of that excess and sell it. This makes it so that you can import electricity and that, nobody needs to be fully self-sufficient on electricity by themselves. This is very realistic to have on. However, it does let you sell electricity across the entire world, which is maybe less realistic. So it's like, do you want the realism of being able to sell electricity, or do you want the realism of not being able to send electricity from Africa to Canada? It's really up to you. Third-party relations effects is a very good option. Basically, if I'm allies, if I'm America and I'm allied with Canada and Canada is allied with the UK, then the UK will start liking me more because Canada likes me. That's how it works. The friends of my friends want to be my friends. That is what this option means. Weather. The weather can affect combat, movement, supply, things like that. There's weather effects you can monitor in the game. It shows the weather of every tile. This is more of a war gamey option. The game is designed with it in mind, but honestly, I don't feel like it actually affects that much. So turning it off seems kind of pointless unless you just really hate war games and you don't like weather effects and things like that. And then you could just turn it off if you want. Spheres of influence, this is off by default, but you can turn it on. This is a carryover from Supreme Ruler Cold War where you have a leader of 2 spheres, and then everybody else kind of just aligns towards the spheres. It completely flips the diplomacy on its head. You will now get the best deals from those that hate you and the worst deals from those that love you, if you're a sphere leader, for example, with the idea that you're supposed to be supporting your sphere. This is really based around playing whoever is in charge of the sphere. So that's what that is. It's very Cold War-ish, but they kind of just kept it in the game anyway. If you're playing smaller nations like neutral ones, this is a really boring way to play the game, but you could still go ahead and do it. This is how you enable it. Next, we have Battle for the Atlantic. This was designed for World War II, Supreme Ruler World War II. And I don't know why it's on by default or why it's even here at this point. It has very specific conditions, like the UK has to be at war with Germany. The UK has to be allied with America or something. America has to be neutral. There's a bunch of weird fucking things that need to be met. Basically, World War II needs to be met for this to even do anything. And all it allows is for example, Germany to put submarines in the Atlantic and hurt the supply of the UK. I would have this off because it's fucking stupid that it's even here anymore, and you're not very likely to see it in a 2023-2030 world scenario. Fixed capitals primarily just affects the player. Basically, as a player, you can move your capital wherever you want, whenever you want. AI can't do that. If your capital gets taken over, it will move, and then as a player, you could pick where it moves. Well, if you want to nerf yourself and other players, you turn this on so players can never move their capital unless they've lost their capital. However, the AI is never going to make use of that. So if you're playing single player, you're just nerfing your own ability to move your capital, which is unrealistic. But it's also unrealistic to move your capital as it's about to be taken, and then with it, all the resources that are in it wouldn't be captured. So there's two sides to that. Use rail transport. This is a feature that was patched into Supreme Ruler Ultimate. It takes rails, and instead of having them be just a way to spread supply for cheaper than roads, it turns them into something that you can transport. Basically, your units will get on trains, move like 30 miles an hour, and be extra vulnerable to attack, but rails don't cost as much as roads. This is an amazing way, a better way, of moving foot units around. Motorized, mechanized units, not as much. On or off, you know, I don't see a reason to turn it off, but if for some reason trains offend you, you could turn it off. Road and rail removal tool, this is what offends me. I don't know why this is off by default. Always, 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 always turn this on. This is a game feature that you do not have to interact with, but that they leave off, and that you can't normally, you know, turn back on unless you're going through like the cheat menu. This allows you to delete roads and rails if you want to reorganize them. And considering these things cost money, I don't really understand why the removal tool is something that's off by default. That makes no sense. So do yourself a favor and turn this on. Even if you think you're never going to interact with it, having the option to say delete a road or a rail that you misplace is only ever a good thing. The Merchant Marine system it's a big thing. It's on by default. This is basically the ability to go to a port and embark using a merchant marine, a commandeered just transport vessel, civilian. It has no guns, it has no armor. It's an AMV, you know? And you could turn this off, and then everybody using naval transport would have to make their own transports for moving units around. It's way easier to play this game with this on, but if you want to make this a lot more strategic, you could turn this off and add a lot of value to naval transport. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just telling you the strengths of both, so that's up to you. Force recache for modding. If you're just playing this game, you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about this at all. Over here on the right is how you pick your nation, and you could literally just type this in here to find a region. Unfortunately, there is no nation named Ridges, but there is one named, well, unfortunately, there isn't one named America, apparently. It's United States only, for some reason, which is weird that they only put half of our name in there. But there you go. You could play that. You could search them up. Very nice. There's also the online. It's very simple. You have your nice little name here. You have that leaning. This will just follow you into every game. You can host a game, close the lobby, open the lobby. You could use saves from the players. This essentially makes it so that when you load up a game that was already in progress, it will look for that save on everyone's machine or their Steam cloud or whatever, and it will use that to load up. If this is off, then you are always, oh, I hate how they change the words. That's confusing. But it'll do what it says here, because you're using a check mark. Why would you do that? Oh, whatever. It will do what it says. Ignore the fact that the checkbox is even here. That is extremely misleading. If it says always transfer, then the host will always transfer the save file to the clients. If it says use saves from other players, then the other players' saves will be used as well if it matches what the host is trying to load up. It's the same exact thing. They have a slightly different UI here, but all the options are the same. Pretty much everything everywhere is the same. Except for now there's a save game button here instead of the load game on the main menu. You load it from here. So, you know, we could play God Save the Queen, Ba Beta, Normal Human Being. Don't know why I named these like this, but that's what these are. And just like that, that is every game mode, every way you can get into a game, unincluding modding, and those are all the settings getting in your way to get into the game, with the exception of graphical settings, which I have covered in SRU, and to be honest, they haven't really changed here. But if you'd like to see that covered, or anything else covered, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I will make a guide on whatever the heck I can think up. If there's not enough guides for you already, go check out my Supreme Ruler Ultimate guides. They have their own playlist, and a lot of that, most of that, is still relevant here, because the game hasn't actually changed that much. For now, however, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on another video.